in 1985, September the 1st, in a small village called Plymouth in the southwest of England. I have a father and a mother. I have a younger sister who's 30. I have a younger brother who's 28. And I have a really young brother who's 18. I went to a primary school in Cornwall, but then when I was about 10 years old, I moved to a town called Salisbury, which is really famous for two things. It's got a really, really big cathedral, the biggest cathedral in all of the UK, and also it's right next to Stonehenge. My school was in Salisbury, right by the cathedral. It's called Bishop Wordsworth School. My two all-time best friends are my two childhood friends. One's called Will, and the other one's called Guy. When I moved to London after university, I lived with Guy and Will for 3 or 4 years. School for me was very happy. I always remember I had really good English and geography teachers. They were always my favourite two subjects. I loved sports, so I played rugby and football quite seriously. And in summer we did athletics and things like that. Did quite a lot of surfing, because I used to go back down to Cornwall. I was always into music, so I played a little bit of guitar as well. I never was lucky enough to go abroad very much. But in school we went on a ski trip once to the Alps, which was really good. It's my first time snowboarding. I think I was 17. That was an awesome week. And I always remember the geography field trips as well. Like we did a couple of geography field trips where we went up to the mountains in England and like we looked at glaciers and like studies like that. So that was cool. My geography field trips and the snowboarding trip were really good. They were like my stand-up memories, I think. Every human being wants to be a rock star or a musician for some element of their life, so I think I wanted to be a rock star. But from a very early age I realised that was never going to happen, so it was definitely a pipe dream rather than an actual dream. I think I've always lived my life by looking at things I know I don't want to do. So I was always aware of things I didn't want to do. I always knew I didn't want to go into like business or anything like that. I wasn't that interested. I always wanted to either be a doctor or a teacher or a policeman or something like that. So after I finished school, I took a year out. I took a year off and I went travelling around the world. So I lived in New Zealand for a few months and then I flew over to Indonesia and I travelled through Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, and then I lived in China for a few months. And that's when I was like 18, 19. Then I went to university for 3 years, to Durham University in the north of England, studied geography and politics. It was really good fun. And then after that I went to live in Canada for a year, where I did like skiing and snowboarding and like taught kids how to snowboard. And then at the end of that I actually went to South America for a few months with my best friend Will, who I mentioned earlier. And we travelled around South America. That was the first time I came to Peru. Then I went back to England and lived in England for a few years, trained to be a teacher. Went back to university, the London School of Economics, through a master's for a year. And then I worked for a couple of charities, like doing charity work for different educational charities, and then I moved up here. Yeah, I think I've always been interested in the world. I think maybe the one reason I like geography so much is because when I was young, my family never travelled. We always went to the same place every year. We went to the same place and I never got to see any of the world. So when I got to like 18 and I could like be my own person, be an adult, the one thing I wanted to do was go and explore and understand how the world works. In England, you have paper boys or paper girls, which are people that go around with a bag with all the newspapers and a bike. Yes, like in the movies? Yes, I used to do that. So I used to go around on a bike. We never used to throw them, you had to actually go and put them in the letterbox. But, and it wasn't as glamorous as that. I never had a bike, I just carried them around in like a little wheelie trolley, like an old person's trolley. So that was my first job. I think I was 12 years old. I got paid £10, so that's 50 soles. I got 50 soles. It was probably slave labour actually, but 50 soles a week. I only had to work 5 days and it was half an hour a day. My first proper job was when I was probably 16. I got a job in the local cinema and I worked at like the English version of Cineplanet. So I worked a couple of nights a week selling tickets and watching movies and selling popcorn and stuff. It was good fun. Best job I ever had. I was working for this educational charity. I was living out in Nepal. And I just didn't really want to go back to the UK, so I was like, I'd quite like to go and learn Spanish and try a new place. I want to go and live near the sea, because I've never really lived like near the sea that I can surf in. And so I looked at South America, and just San Silvestre came up on the job list, so I applied for that, and I got the job. So I moved there. Life in Lima, it's hard to say one. I think living near the sea and being able to surf every day is top 3. The food obviously is insanely good, so being able to eat ceviche every Sunday makes me really happy. And I really like the weather here because I come from a country where it rains a lot, and here it never rains, or it barely ever rains, which is really nice. I'd like to be a head teacher at some point. In the next maybe 4 or 5 years, I'd like to be in charge of a school. And then I think I'd like to do something totally different for the rest of my life after that. I've always thought I'd like to have different careers, some different things. So I've done teaching now for about 6 years. I've worked for charities, and I've done charity work for a few years as well, so I know what that feels like. I'd quite like to do something else. I'd quite like to be a head teacher, and I'd quite like to do something else. So maybe go and work for the police. I've thought about going back and being a doctor. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but something different after a while. I think a few more years teaching, and then try a new profession. Thanks, guys.